So let's go ahead, make dashboard dynamic. We can use a Next.js API called unstable no store. If you don't use this, it's probably going to be cached. Okay. So in our data.ts, we are going to import a function call, and it's going to be destructured unstable no store from next cache. And we are actually going to just say no store like that. Save this. And here, we're just going to call this function. Simple as this. All right. And then we are going to, let's go ahead and copy this because we want to add it pretty much every function. So for the latest invoices, we are also going to do for the card data. And then what we want to do, so let's simulate a slow data fetch. In our data.ts file, uncomment the console log and set timeout inside fetch revenue. So let's go back to uncomment this to function. So basically what's happening is artificial set timeout. Uncomment this one as well. Let's go back to our application, refresh, go back here. It's fetching revenue data and it's slower than after 3 seconds it gets. So it's an artificial 3 seconds delay to simulate the slow data. The result is that now your whole page is blocked while the data is being fetched, right? Which brings us to a common challenge developers have to solve. So with dynamic rendering, our application is only as fast as our slowest data fetch. So that comes our next topic, which is streaming. Let's talk about streaming. And streaming is a data transfer technique that allows us to break down a route into smaller chunks and progressively stream them from the server to the client as they become ready. And this allows the user to see and interact with parts of the page without waiting for all the data to load before any UI can be shown to the user. So instead of the entire data at the same time, we are breaking that data into different chunks, and then we are basically sending them to our client as they become ready. There are two ways we can implement streaming in Next.js: at the page level with the loading.tsx file, or for a specific component with suspense. Okay, React has this suspense. So let's see how this works. Right now, in our dashboard, we have this page.tsx and we have this layout.tsx. So we already talked about this one. Another file that we can actually create here, and we're going to call this loading.tsx. Okay, so loading.tsx is a special file that's actually going to show a loading status when the application gets loaded, right? So let's go ahead and export default function. It's going to be loading. I'm going to call this loading. And it's just going to return, right now, you can return anything, SVG or whatever, any JSX, but right now just say loading. Now, if we go back to our application, now you can see that it is showing loading, okay, while we wait for this one. So there is a skeleton, dashboard skeleton already created in the UI. So let's go ahead and do that. So instead of this div, say just loading, we are going to render this UI skeleton component that is defined in our UI skeletons. Let's go back to our application, now refresh this page, and now see that. So that's, you can achieve this effect by simply putting into that loading.tsx file. So right now, your loading skeleton will apply to the invoice and customer pages as well. If you go to invoices, you refresh customers, just like layout is affecting everything, your loading is going to affect your customers' invoices as well. So what we want to do right now, since loading is a level higher than invoices, right? And the customers in the file system, it's also applied to those pages. So we can change this with the route groups. So let's go ahead and create a new folder, and we're going to call this overview inside the dashboard. So we're going to call this, and we're going to put this in a parentheses, overview. Okay. Now this parentheses is known as a route group. So now we are going to move our loading.tsx and page.tsx files inside the folder. So we're going to say our loading and our page, we're going to move this to in our overview. Yes. So now the loading.tsx file will only apply to your dashboard page. So far, we're streaming a whole page, but instead we can be more granular and stream a specific component using React Suspense. So if we remember the slow data request, fetch revenue, this is the request that is slowing down the whole page. Instead of blocking our page, we can use Suspense to stream only the component and immediately show the rest of the page they look like. So let's go ahead and do that. So delete all instances of fetch revenue and its data from dashboard overview page.tsx. So let's go ahead and go to overview. Let's go to page.tsx. Let's delete fetch revenue here, and let's delete this one. Import Suspense from React, and we're also going to import a skeleton specific to that component. What we want to do is go here. Let's go ahead and just copy this. Okay, it's going to be a wrapping component. We're going to put this here, and in suspense, it does take a fallback. You can just put whatever, like even a string loading or something like that, but we have a skeleton already, so we are going to render this component skeleton. So let's go ahead and delete this revenue here. Let's go to this component. Okay, so here in this component, fetch the data. It's not going to take any props. We're going to say revenue, await, fetch revenue, like so. Okay, now go back here. The errors are gone. Now we are not passing the props. The component is specifically fetching its own data. And here we're just going to creating a suspense. So if there's any time delay, it should show us the skeleton. Now let's go back to our application. Let's refresh. And now you see only this particular component, because this is the component where we added that 3-second delay. All right, so you can actually go granular with that specific component instead of showing a skeleton for the entire page. So let's go ahead and practice and do one more, and do this with the latest invoice. So let's go ahead and go to our code editor and your page.tsx file. Let's move fetch latest invoices down from the page to the latest invoices component. Let's just remove this, save it. We are going to import latest invoices skeleton, just like the revenue skeleton. We are going to delete this because we don't need this anymore. Let's go down, and the latest invoices, we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to have this. We're going to have a fallback equals to the component itself, like so. We are not going to use this prop. Let's go to this function directly, and here we are going to now import latest invoices. We do not need to call any props, and it's going to be an await function because this is an async function, so we're going to await this, fetch, and that should be it. Let's go ahead and check this out. There is a problem. So let's refresh this. Okay. There you go. You can see the revenue thing and the latest information. This invoice is right here. So now we need to wrap the card components in suspense. So we can fetch data for each individual card, but this could lead us to popping effect. As the cards load in, it can be visually jarring for the user. So how would we tackle this problem? Okay, so you see that there are lots of cards right here, this one. To create more of a staggered effect, we can group the cards using a wrapper component. Now this means the static side nav will be shown first, followed by the cards, etc. Okay, so in our page.tsx file, a few things we're going to do. We're going to delete the card components, then we're going to delete the fetch card data function, and then we're going to import a new wrapper component called card wrapper. So let's import the card wrapper function, and that's going to come from the UI already created. And let's get card skeleton. Okay, save that. Let's go ahead, just under this div right here, we are going to create the card wrapper. Actually, we are going to create the suspense function first, and here we're going to say card wrapper. We are obviously going to give a fallback or suspense. It's going to be our card skeleton. Now, let's go ahead and move into this dashboard and card.tsx. So here we are going to import the fetch card data information. Okay, good. This is the card wrapper function we have. We are actually going to go back to the page.tsx, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this, copy this, and put this here. And then let's go ahead and comment this out. So there are pretty much the same information as here, like title, collected, all this information. We're just moving into the card wrapper, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and delete all the card here. We don't need it anymore because we just moved it. Go back to card.tsx. And there's no error. It looks like everything is good. Again, go back, refresh the page, and then it's the same thing. So where you place your suspense boundaries will vary depending on your application, right? So in general, it's good practice to move your data fetches down to the components that need it, when then wrap these components in suspense. But there is nothing wrong with streaming the sections or the whole page if that's what your application needs.